This podcast is a Believe Network and Siete production.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this episode, it truly is an honor for me to give you guys some background on me. I got involved in the drum and bugle corps activity in the fall of 1991 with a group called Spirit of New Jersey, Spirit of Newark, at the time, the City of Newark Marching 100. And during that time in the 90s, in the mid 90s and late 90s, there were a lot of influential drum corps that I was idolizing. But there was only a few that really shattered the mold in all that they did, and they have been doing it for decades. I'm talking about the Concord Blue Devils, and the gentleman that is on this episode this week, the list of accomplishments are in parallel. We're talking about a guy, first of all, who has been in this activity for over 50 years. And I mean that with the biggest compliment in the world as a performer and as an educator. Think about this. Been a part of the 21-time DCI World Championships, in the double digits of percussion championships. He's won snare individuals as a member, and he could probably still win it today. And he's a proud member of the DCI, WGI, and World Drum Corps Hall of Fames. It's the one and only ScoJo, Scott Johnson. Scott, thank you so much for giving us your time. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. You're making me feel old. Knock it off.
And I mean, it's something when you have wisdom and you can pass on to people, that you've been doing for decades. Again, it's truly a blessing. But, you're fresh off a tour, with the Blue Devils. Congratulations on another successful season, taking bronze overall. Talk about the 2024 season and what it meant to you as an educator and getting through the highs and the lows, getting through the season.
That's a good question. It's a loaded question. It's crazy. This was my 46th year with the Blue Devils on tour, and they all definitely kind of melt together after a while.
Yeah, right.
I try to literally block out the season as soon as it's over. I try to move on to what's going to be next. What are we going to do next? How are we going to get better? How are we going to fix this, fix that? Some of the problems that we had during the season. This last year was really interesting. It was a very experienced group, the percussion line as well as the horn line and color guard. And we had a very challenging show that we presented to them. We always feel like we have to go outside the box a little bit more every year to be rewarded, like most drum crews do. And this year we challenged them like crazy, and we'll definitely take the bronze. No arguments about that. I thought the Boston Crusaders as well as the Blue Coats did an amazing job this year, and it's good to see those guys up there, pushing us and us pushing them, and just the activity keeps growing because of competition like that. And we had a great time during the summer. Like I said, it's one of the more, I'll use the word, friendly drum lines, percussion sections, where everybody got along. There was no issues of any kind of anybody not liking somebody or having a problem with this or having a problem with that.
Right.
And that makes the season go by so much easier. And it was a great year.
That's good to hear. And again, I had the opportunity to watch you guys in the lot, when you guys were down where I live. And again, when you're seeing it up close, because, we have our phones, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we're seeing all these clips, but just to be able to see, warm-ups and a lot. And it's a culture, ladies and gentlemen, for those that are not familiar with the drum corps activity. It's just a culture. When you're a percussionist, when you're a drummer, and you want to go to shows, to me, the most entertaining part of it is just going in the lot and see these cats throw down. But I want to talk about your beginning and where you started. You're talking about 5 years old. You joined the Red Knights Drum and Bell Corps, and then you went on to the Royal Airs Drum and Bugle Corps. So talk about that exposure at such a young age.
Well, you did your homework, didn't you? I love it. Yeah, I took private lessons at the age of 4, drum private lessons. And I tell the story, my first lesson was Mama, Dad, Dad, Mama, Dad, at the age of 4. So yeah, that's right, people. I was playing diddles at the age of 4. That's what I like to brag about. I have two older sisters and one younger sister. My two older sisters twirled baton, so they were in the pageantry when I was born. And so I was on mom's hip at all the parades every weekend, and all the guys were hitting drums and all the girls were twirling batons. And I figured I should start hitting the drum because I was a guy. And so I just
Right.
started hitting whatever I could. I wanted to be like the bigger guys. And I joined the Red Knights Drum and Bell Corps, which we formed that year because a lot of us younger siblings had nothing to do except run around and go crazy. So they go, we got to organize these kids. So me and a
Right.
bunch of my younger friends, we started this feeder group, if you want to call it that, called the Red Knights Drum and Bell Corps, which fed into what was called the San Leandro Royal Airs Drum and Bugle Corps. And those were the older guys. And we were too young to be in there yet. So we started this little feeder program without the bugles with glockenspiels, and
Right.
that's my roots. I grew up in the drum and bell corps world. And the interesting thing, it's kind of funny, is our biggest competitors, because we were called the Royal Family, which was a group of Rhythmettes batons, Royal Airs Drum and Bugle Corps, Red Knights Drum and
Hmm.
Bell Corps. So we had all these different groups underneath this umbrella of the Royal Family. Our
Hmm.
biggest competitors were the Blue Devils. The Blue
Oh,
Devils
wow.
had the majorettes. They had the drum and bell corps. They had the drum and
Right.
bugle corps. So that was like head to head, and we literally are like 30 miles away from each other. I grew up in the Bay Area, 30 miles from Concord, pretty much. So I was raised to hate the Blue Devils because that was our main competitors. And it's interesting how life works out, and I've been there
Yeah.
many years since.
That's an incredible story, to think about, hey, they were your competitors and you ended up going there. And that was going to lead me to my next question. So how was that transition going, from the Royal Airs, to joining Blue Devils in 1976 at that time, being a part of that organization?
Well, what happened was the Royal Airs ended up folding, financial issues like most drum corps nowadays. And
Yeah.
they ended up folding back in 1974, 73. And they actually merged with the Commodores from Stockton, which was a drum and bugle corps. And we became the Royal Commodores for 1 year. And I
Hmm.
think we ended up either 13th or 14th place at DCI. It was my first year going back to DCI with an organization. It was
Hmm.
1974. And then 1975, I was actually at rehearsals with the Santa Clara Vanguard, and I was going to be in their snare line. And my dad said, "Hey, why don't you stay home this summer? I need help building on a family room." And so at the age of 16, I think I was then, 16 or 17, I ended up staying home that summer, not marching with Santa Clara Vanguard, which I really wanted to. Bob Kalkofen, who was the instructor, was a private teacher of mine, and he kind of got me in there and said, "You're in, let's go." And
Hmm.
then 1975, I didn't march because of that. And then when 76 came around, all my friends from the Royal Airs that I marched with went to Blue Devils. And
Wow.
they were, let's say, harassing me that I was going to go to Vanguard.
Right.
And they're saying, "Come on, man, you got to go to Blue Devils. Vanguard's already established. You got to help us build up this program." And so out of peer pressure from my very good friends, I ended up going to Blue Devils. And it's interesting, those decisions in life. That one
Right.
decision of my dad saying, "Stay home for the summer." I mean, if I would have marched Santa Clara in '75, which I was going to, I don't know if I would be here today doing what I'm doing now. If I would have met my wife, because I met her through Blue Devils. I mean, all these little twists and turns. It's
Right.
it's really interesting to go back and look upon now. But yeah, I joined Blue Devils 1976. That was my first year. Um, all the guys kind of knew me because of the Bay Area. We all kind of knew each other, and I always went out for individuals all the time in those little small
Hmm.
shows around the California area. So we kind of knew each other, and it was an easy fit, and I was excited. And that was the first year that the Blue Devils won a championship, was 1976. So it was really good timing on my part to get there at that time.
Wow, and you talked about 75 Santa Clara. There's a former drum instructor of mine, Tom Brown, the late Tom Brown, that recently passed away. He was my first drum instructor at Spirit of Newark in 1990, the 1992 season. So when you brought up 75 Santa Clara, that really brought me to Tom Brown. So rest in peace, Tom Brown.
I know,
Hope.
yeah, I knew Tom. I knew Tom very well, and it was devastating news when I heard about it. Yeah, this past year,
Yeah.
right? It was just this past
It was
year.
I think it was last year, I believe. Yeah, that he had passed
Yeah.
away. That's unfortunate. So you join, the Blue, you're winning championships your first year. You call it the Scott Johnson effect, and everything. But
Good timing.
absolutely. So you age out in '79, and you join the Blue Devil staff. But then, of course, right after that, the late great Tom Float comes on board after a lot of success he's had in the activity, Spirit Atlanta and everything. I want to talk about the relationship you had with Tom Float and his as a mentor, as an instructor, as a friend, and about his legacy. about Tom Float?
Yeah, before we get into Tom, I was hired to teach Blue Devils my last 2 years as a marching member.
Mhm.
And so I was actually on staff at 78, 79, my last 2 years marching. So I got a paycheck to be in the Blue Devils, which was kind of cool. I was like a professional snare drummer, if you want to look at it that way.
Nice.
So the transition to teach right after that was easy because all of a
Right.
sudden I just wasn't in the line anymore, but I was saying the same stuff and working the same way pretty much.
Right.
We had some rough years percussion wise in 80 and 81. The whole staff was 22 years old, the whole percussion staff. We all aged out in 79 and we all took over in 1980. And so it was like, see what the kids can do. And we did all right. We didn't do great, and 81 came around and we were okay, but it wasn't great. And
Right.
we needed a change. We needed some supervision, we needed somebody. And so we got a hold of Tom Float, came into town. We had a couple of meetings and Tom took over the program, became the caption head. I stuck around. Some of us didn't stuck around that were on that staff because they didn't like the way things were going and different things. But my relationship with Tom was very special, of course. We taught together for I think it was 9 years with the Blue Devil organization throughout those those 80s. And he lived at my house for a while when he first got out there, and we would just sit down and get pads and drum our butts off on the coffee table, and just
Mhm.
talk about theories and talk about technique and what we do. And it was real interesting because I was the snare tech before Tom
Right.
showed up because I was a snare drummer. Still am a snare drummer, and what happened was, when we first started talking about, okay, Tom's a caption head, and Tom looks at me and he goes, well, I take the snares. I go, no, I take the snares. And I was like, boot them up, let's go. And so Tom says, well, I think we should go drum. And I went, hell yes, let's go drum, because I had individual chops, right? So me and Tom literally went out behind this house and we got these pads out and we're drumming.
Mhm.
And I realized he was a machine. I mean, if you could program a drum machine to sound perfectly between 16th to 32nd interpretation and 24th notes,
Right.
and I mean, it was like he was so freaking clean with himself, and I was fast. I mean, I was just a fast individual guy, but I didn't have that control, that math down that Tom did, and it was like really interesting. And I told Tom, I go, okay, check it out. I go, you take the snares because I agree with completely how you play and how this could be really clean.
Mhm.
I go, I'll take the tenors, but I want a snare book and I'll move it around the drums. So if for those of you nostalgic guys out there, if you go check out the 1982 Blue Devil drum line, that's the first time Tom Float showed up. The quad book was one of the first books that played flam drags and flam taps and scrape fiddles and all that stuff
Right.
that's common today. But back then, tenors didn't play any of that. It was, they barely had any diddles. They had a lot of double stops and singles, and that's about it. But
Right.
back in the day, I mean, in 82, we brought a snare book to the tenor line. And that was because of my snare chops and Tom's influence. And so we just worked together on that. And yeah, Tom and I had a great run. We won four percussion titles in a row. I think 83, 84, 85, 86, if I'm not mistaken. Should have won a couple more, but that's okay. I won't get into the judging aspect of things.
Well, that could be another episode in itself, let me tell you.
And I got a lot of friends that want to be involved in that conversation too.
I'm sure.
But no, I mean, it was a great relationship. Extremely sorry to see him go. Of course, I spoke at a service down in Southern California a couple of years ago, and it was one of the hardest things I ever had to do.
Yeah, I think about, because when I first heard of Tom Float when I was young, it was the sticks, you know what I mean?
Sure,
And
sure.
it was his signature stick. But just as I was getting older and just doing my homework, as far as learning the history of the activity and just his influence, especially on those lines in the 80s when you guys won all those percussion titles, they're still talked about today for sure. Now,
Well,
your
and
teachers, go,
one more thing
go.
about Tom.
Hmm.
Because of him, he changed the activity completely. Because back in those 80s, it was a tick system. Throughout the
Yes.
70s, throughout the early 80s, it was about a tick on a score sheet. The judge
Hmm.
would have a clipboard, walk around, and when you made a mistake, they'd pull the clipboard up and write it down with the snare, tenor, whatever.
Hmm.
And after the 83 season, we were extremely successful in drums. We lost drum with the drum corps didn't win, but the drum line won. And it was like it was a full point spread. It was a 17-9, it was second place, and we had an 18-9, which is insane when you think about it nowadays, a full point in one
Absolutely.
caption. And that was the last year of the tick system because the judging community decided, okay, this is going to get out of hand. We got to come up with another system for the activity. So
Right.
that's how the activity evolves. And Tom was a big part of evolving that activity by getting rid of the tick system because of our success. And then that's when it became what we have today, a version of what we have today.
Yeah. I mean, not to talk about the judging aspect, but I came up when there was still a field judge, you know what I mean? And they're still hearing the ticks up, especially with the snare line. I'm a snare drummer, and we have the most exposed instrument out of the entire battery. And it's just like, all right, you got to be on your A game. And now there's no longer judges on the field. I miss that a little bit, but I also understand, to your point, evolution of the activity.
Yeah, I mean, we still have a judge on the field, knock on wood, knock on something. Because I'm all for that stuff. I'm as old school as it gets, right? And so I want the
Right.
judge in their face as much as possible. I want them,
Yeah.
I want them on the field the whole time if possible, but that's not going to happen nowadays with safety and everything else. But we
Yeah.
do have the judge on the field. He is able to get in front of them when the drum line comes up close enough. I mean, the rule is they can go, I think, 2 yards onto the field, which
Right.
is kind of a stupid rule, but that's okay. At least they can go on the field a little bit.
Right.
And
Exactly.
not be in danger by getting hit or hurting somebody else. So I'm all for the judge being out there, absolutely. And they're still on the field, but not as much as we'd like to.
Definitely. Talk about your teaching style. And I've heard stories. I have a friend, Derrick Kelly, that marched for you. My boy Booney, Ralph Nader, that marched, Alex, that marched in the quad line. And I heard nothing but just high marks over the years about just Scott Johnson's just cool hand Luke. He's a laid back guy that loves the activity. Talk about what works for you from a teacher perspective, your philosophy versus some of your contemporaries.
Um, I don't really know my philosophy. I'd like to know what those guys said, so I can call them and yell at them if I have to. But I mean, my teaching style is, my dad quoted this years ago for his work, and I
Mhm.
took it upon myself and I use it. I use it in all those ScoJo lick of the weeks and one of those things that I say all the time. And it's, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And when I think about marching percussion, you think about how many times we play 8 on a hand in a season. Okay. I mean,
Tons.
yeah, I mean, thousands probably,
Yeah, I
every
say.
warm up, every show, every whatever. I mean, how many reps do you do of 8 on a hand, for an example? And it's like, if you're not having fun doing that, then my God, it's going to be boring. It's going to be stupid. You're
Right.
going to, so we always try to make it fun. I always try to make it as fun as possible. Um, I'm very fortunate, the talent that we get with the Blue Devils, which is where I've been recently, obviously for a long time. The talent's insane, so we can mess around a little bit and have fun and not have to be so serious all the time and know that they'll
Mhm.
show up when they want to show up. I think nowadays, I think the best thing about my teaching style is I hire really good people to make me look good. My drum staff is former Blue Devil members that came through the program. And I love that because they know what they've learned through me and with me and through our other staff that was there at the time. And now they're starting to develop their own style and their own technique and their own way to talk to the line and teach the line. And it's just, it's an extenuation of what we've done in the past. So I don't, my style is just, let's have a good time. I don't know how else to explain it other than, I still keep my chops up. I think that helps. I could still,
Mhm.
stand in front of a drum and play something for a short period of time and impress
Right.
somebody, and then walk away and they go, "What the hell was that?" I go, "That's right, that's right."
I
just
still
just to
got
have
it.
fun, just to have fun.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's just. I mean, you think about the activity, how intense it gets, especially the last couple of weeks at the upper level and at every level, I think. But
Yeah.
at our level, it's crazy. I mean, it definitely gets crazy because you're trying to become the best in the world at something. So those last
Yeah.
couple of weeks, the members get intense, the staff gets intense, and if you're not enjoying it, it could be an ugly thing. So we definitely make sure we enjoy it as much as we can.
Definitely, definitely. Now I know you took some time. You took a couple years off from BD. 90, you were a consultant at Santa Clara. Then, of course, you ran the program from 91 to 93. And then, of course, you returned to the Blue Devils in 94. And that's what I felt, to me, where the Blue Devils just did this and just never looked back. I love My Spanish Heart. That show is I was actually listening to it today, the entire 94 show. And I get goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps right now. Just thinking about that show and just what it meant for the activity in regards to where you were at that time, winning your 7th title at that in 94 up until 21, fairly recently. So from that time, and when you talk about the innovative, because when I think about the Blue Devils, I think about leaders of innovation in this activity and trying new things. Talk about the innovative show designs that you've done over the years. And when you talk about working with, obviously, your design staff, color guard, brass, obviously your entire percussion staff, what's the process like when you're coming up with all these concepts that you do year after year?
Good question. A lot of it's trial by error. A lot of it is we have the concept. Scott Chandler, program coordinator nowadays, comes up with the concept, and even for many years now.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, with that concept, maybe we should do this, or let's try this, or have you seen this? One of the things that I think about that the viewers might understand is in the mid '90s, we came up with the big cymbal rack in the front sidelines,
Yes.
right? And I think it was I want to say the '96 show, but I could be wrong. But we ended up, and we even had some big old toms in the '94 show.
Hmm.
For Caribe, I think it was one of the songs. But we started to come up with different ways to affect, to affect the show. And what was interesting is we were not getting the points downstairs from the drum judge because it was easy stuff when crash, crash, 2 and 4 on the cymbals. We had guys rotating in and out of this while they're playing the cymbals and
Right.
drum parts, and we weren't getting the credit downstairs because it wasn't very difficult, but we're getting the credit upstairs in the effect captions.
Right.
And I've said this many years, and I'll keep saying it. I mean, and it started around that time where the scoring system has definitely changed. Where
Absolutely.
when I marched, if a drum judge gave you 10 points, those 10 points went towards your total score. Nowadays with the new system, if a drum judge, a brass judge, a visual judge downstairs gives you 10 points, 5 points goes towards that total score. So the
Right.
caption thing to me isn't as big as it used to be. I mean, it's still a feather in your cap and you still want to accomplish that, but it's all
Mhm.
about those upstairs numbers. And I remember at that time they're going, well, you're losing points down, you're losing a couple tenths downstairs. And yeah, but we're gaining, more tenths upstairs. So it's totally
Right.
worth it to do that. So we always look at how to get more effective. We always look at what can we do different that hasn't been done yet. And the longer the activity goes on, the harder that gets because a lot of people are doing some really cool stuff now. A lot of people are
Yes.
reaching outside the box. I mean, the influence
Indeed.
on WGI when it kicked in the mid '90s was huge.
Hmm.
That influence kicked into the DCI activity big time as far as you can't just stand still and drum anymore. You got to move. And I remember it was got early 2000s, I think it was, and maybe late '90s. And we had a snare feature, and I go, well, we obviously can't stand there and do it. What do you guys got? And one guy just started dancing while he was drumming. I go, can you guys do that? Can you guys dance while you drum? And we did. And that was like one of the first years that was on a summer field as opposed to indoor. And and so I don't want to say we started that because it's been around forever in the indoor world. But I think we took it to the field saying, okay, we got to push this activity to what the next level is going to be. And it's not just stand and ram anymore. You can still do that and it's still effective. But if you move while you're doing it, we all know that's harder to do. So
Yeah, and that's why I give a lot of the lines credit today because again, I stopped marching because I did Bushwhackers which is now DCA all age, but I
yeah,
did Bushwhackers from 1998 until 2006, and we were starting to play around with that stuff. I would say early 2000s with like a lot of the moving around like drum feature. You're not just standing there parked like it was back in the day, but we were
right.
starting to do some of that stuff, and now it's just like that is just I don't want to say it's a requirement, but that's the direction that we're in today in doing that stuff.
Well, and what's interesting about that is I remember when we first started to introduce it, to the Blue Devils, for example, and we still had the old school guys in the line still. They're going, "What? We're not dancing. We're not going to dance. What are you talking about dancing? We're here to drum."
Right.
And
Mhm.
the evolution of that nowadays, there's so much. Most of the drum lines today are in indoor lines, right? And
Right.
they do that stuff, and they love doing that stuff. And they come to me nowadays and say, "Hey, can we do this during this section? Can we do this during this section?" So
Right.
they're bringing this dance vocabulary, this body movement vocabulary into our world, before we even talk about it. So it's interesting how that whole thing evolved over the years, right? It's crazy.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and that's what I was going to lead to my next question because you guys, Blue Devils, are always in the conversation every single year. I can't remember the last time you guys were out of maybe the top five. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I can't remember because you guys are always in the conversation. What and who do you credit that to?
Um, the longevity of the staff.
Mhm.
The staff's been together for a long time. I mean, you look at, other organizations where they have, a staff change almost every year at a major caption, whether it's a brass caption, color guard
Right.
caption, visual, percussion. I mean, people are jumping around constantly. We have not. I mean, this staff pretty much has been together. We added Chip Krotz in the brass staff a few years ago, but he was a former Blue Devil and taught here before as well, and he's the caption head now. And that's been like our latest change, and it wasn't really a change. It was just promoting Chip.
Right.
So I mean, I think that's a big part of it, the longevity of the staff. And I think the members that come here, they know they're going to get consistent comments.
Mhm.
I mean, I keep my battery staff pretty small, where I know a lot of organizations have like 15, 20 people on their battery staff because they can't afford to be on tour all the time. So they'll come in for a few days, leave, another guy comes in, another guy comes in, which they have to do because of financial reasons. I assume
Right.
that's why. And I'm lucky enough to have guys that either don't need money or or well off, where they can do 2 weeks, they can do all the same. My
Right.
best guy, Rudy Garcia, he does he takes 1 week off in the early season and that's it, and he does every day on tour. So they're getting that consistent feedback every day, and I think that's a big, and that's the entire staff. There's people that never leave tour, which is rare
Right.
nowadays. I myself, I mean, I make my own schedule. I'm still on tour much more than most caption heads. And my wife keeps telling me, you don't have to do that much. And when I'm at home freaking out, she goes, "Yeah, get back on the road. Go on, get out there."
Right, 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 right. You're
Because
still you're in such routine, right?
it is, and I got to be there, whether I'm doing anything or not. I just got to be there. I just love it too much. I mean, COVID taught me how much I miss this activity, how much I missed my job. I was home for 2 years straight, like most of us, and thank God my wife
Yeah.
likes me, because I mean I've never been home that long ever, and I was home
Right, right,
literally
right.
every day for 2 years, and I realized I totally miss the what I do for a living. I hate to travel. The travel still sucks, but I love the destination. When you get there and you're either watching performances or you're teaching or you're helping somebody or you're just observing, these amazing performances. I mean, I miss the hell out of it. So I'm glad it's back.
I want to talk about a guy. You talked about an organization earlier, and I'm going to reference a guy who was actually at Blue Devils as section leader, snare tech, and he's doing some really cool stuff with the Blue Coats. I'm talking about Roger Carter. Talk
Absolutely.
about the evolution from where you saw him, because you had your thumbprint is on that. You know what I mean? And being able to see what he's doing today. Talk about how proud you are as an educator seeing a guy like him fly the way he's doing right now.
One of the first guys I found and hugged after this past season. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Roger was my center snare when I took over in '94. When I
Mhm.
came back to Blue Devils from Santa Clara. He was the man, and I put all the faith in the world in him, and he was the snare drummer for 2 years. And I think by mistake, I hired him right out of aging out. I should have waited a year or two and had him. I think it was a mistake because he never stopped that. He came right into the organization, and he kind of, I don't want to say he got burned out, but there was just some issues where it's like, Roger, maybe you need to take some time off. And he taught for what, 2 or 3 years, I think. He was on my staff
Yeah.
for 2 or 3 years after that. And he did take some time off, and he started to find his own, which I thought was great. He had a great indoor line with Sacramento Freelancers. He was running that, and it was amazing what they were doing, you
Yeah.
know. And then he got other gigs, and those other gigs, I think, did he go to Madison first? I'm trying to remember where he ended up
I
going.
want to say yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but what he's done with Blue Coats, I mean, is awesome. I mean, when you see them now, they drum with no fear. I love that. It's
Yeah.
just we're not worried about making an error. We're just going to go out there and play the book like we're supposed to play the book. And a lot of that is what Roger did. So that definitely comes from Roger. No, I love the fact that he's as successful as he is right now.
Yeah, like I said, I gave him a shout out and he came over to say hello. And when I think about my early years in the activity, I think about seeing tall dude, long hair, and had chops that I wish I
When
could
he
borrow
was,
for an hour.
I know when he was teaching with me, we were at some show during the summer, and some guy walked up and had a tattoo on his arm of Roger Carter's face. I
Are
mean,
you
literally, it was,
serious?
yes, he had a tattoo of Roger, his face, the hair, his face on his arm. And we both looked at each other and go, okay, this is getting weird.
Wow.
So yeah, he had that influence on many people, let me tell you.
He was a rock star, man.
Still is,
That was
still
the
is.
influence. Absolutely, still a rock star. So
Yes.
let me ask you this though, in all seriousness though, in this activity, how do you define success?
Oh, wow. The things that I say at clinics, people ask me about, what's good and bad about drum corps, about DCI,
Right,
this activity. And I say the best thing about drum corps is competitive.
right,
I go, the worst thing about drum corps, it's competitive.
right,
I mean, you got to put that competition part on it because that's what everybody talks about. I mean, that's why I'm here
agreed.
with you, because of my success, right?
Yes.
If we never won any shows, I probably wouldn't be talking to you like this. Um, so you got to put it on the success of the organization. Um, but we never look at it that way. I mean, we never tell our members that. We always, our whole goal is you guys need to perform to the best of your ability, whatever that's going to be. And if
Mhm.
the numbers work out, the numbers work out. But we have no control over that. We have no control over the numbers. The only thing we can control is how well you guys perform. So we're going to do our best to make sure you got a good enough show and know how to play it and understand it completely enough where you can perform the hell out of it.
Right.
So to me, a successful season is, performing the show to the best of their ability.
Yeah, man, that's one. It's crazy. Like one of my instructors from Bush, shout out to J.R. Bechtel. He used to tell us every year at finals, he would tell us right before we go on the field, he said, guys, don't let this one day dictate your season. Never ever let this one day dictate your season. Think about the journey from open house all the way till now and just perform for yourselves. And that used to calm me down actually before I hit the field, because you want to, like you talked about it earlier, the last couple of weeks of the season is intense, and it kind of brings that down a little bit and kind of bring that realistic, like, you know what, you're right, let's just go out there and just perform and have fun, and that's what it really comes
Absolutely.
down to.
Absolutely. You got it. That's it. Have a good time. You're at
Yeah.
this level for a reason. Go out and enjoy it.
Yes, indeed. So how have you adapted to the rapid changes in the activity, especially over the last 20 to 25 years with the evolution of electronics, and all, again, to your point, the WGI, movement coming into the fold. How are you, going back to the 70s and still at a high level now? How are you adapting? What are some of those secrets?
Um, no secret. I love it. I love technology. I see what's being done, what was done in indoors. I love judging indoor percussion. I'm one of the WGI judges, and everyone asks me, why do you still do that? It's because I got the best seat in the house. Nobody could sit in front of me. I'm down there close, get out of my way. I'm going to enjoy the hell out of this, and talk into a little recorder. Um, and you could see the evolution of percussion, of percussive theater, if you want to call it that.
Hmm.
And I've always been one to, what's next? What's next? Can we put jetpacks on the snare line and have them rise above and get in the GE guy's face? I mean, is that what's going to be next? Because I'm all for it. Whatever we can do, man, let's go. And I know I'm rare because I know a lot of old school guys hate the activity now and talk bad about it because what they're
I
doing.
hear,
This
yeah,
ain't drum corps. It's like, well, yeah, it's a drum corps. It's just not your drum corps.
right.
Get over
Agreed.
it.
Agreed.
Talk to the kids today. They love it. Just like you loved it when you marched.
Hmm.
And to see that, to see the members enjoying it so much, that keeps me going. And I mean, I love technology. We're having meetings as we speak about how we can do things differently next year to use technology in our favor, for rehearsals, for performances, for show concepts, for all of the above. So yeah, I mean, it's you got to stay up with the times, and I keep trying to do that, and I listen to my younger members and my younger staff guys all the time.
Wow, and I love that, again, to your point. I see the news groups all the time. I mean, even I can still remember in the 90s, early 2000s, there was a group called Ram D. That was a Google page that
I
a
remember
lot
that.
of, oh my God, and that you want to talk about, people were losing their minds then, and this is when we still had G Bugles, and all of a
Yes.
sudden, when the electronics thing changed, I mean, people lost their minds. And
Oh yeah.
even me, I was a little confused about it at first. I was just like, wait, this is not the drum corps that I grew up doing. But I have also had to get off of my high horse and say, you know what, man? Like, let's see what this evolves into. And I'll be honest with you, it took up until 2014 when I saw the Tilt show by the Blue Coats, and I'm like, okay, I get it now. I get it. And I'm
Yeah.
embracing it, and I'm loving it now. I'm loving it because, to me, again, it's all theater. It's entertainment. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and it's entertainment. You said it right there. It's entertainment. I mean, how entertaining can you be, and what vehicles do you need to be entertaining? So especially with today's audience, which is not the '70s audience, right?
Right.
So
Apparently,
yeah, no,
absolutely.
it's all about that. I'm with you 100%. It's all about entertainment, and that's what we do.
System Blue. I know there's you guys are doing with the brass and everything. I know with the drums is no longer there, but I actually like that. I'm like, wait a minute, the Blue Devils are they've done everything and they're coming out with their own instruments. So how was that developed? Because I'm curious and I'm really intrigued by that as far as how you guys were able to come together and come up with the concept to come up as far as making your own line of drums.
Well, Dave Gibbs, our executive director, had an idea. And, with the Blue Devil success and where we were with the companies, back then it was, with Vic Firth, the Remo drum heads, percussion companies, Zildjian cymbals. And I was in Dave's office one day and he goes, I want you to make our drumsticks. I went, what? He goes, I want you to make our drumsticks. I go, you want me to go cut down a tree and whittle down wood? What are you talking about?
Right.
And he's going, well, how come the companies are using us all the time to make their equipment better and we don't get anything over that? We get free equipment, but that's it. He goes, I think we should be part of a partnership of some kind. And that's how the whole thing kind of sort of, how it started is Dave talking to me about drumsticks. And so we approached all the drum companies and the horn companies and all the companies and said, we have this idea. We want to do this. Do you want to be with us or not? Some said yes, some said no. And so we changed around a little bit and found some of the groups that wanted to help us out. And then when it came down to System Blue, it was, can we do our own equipment?
Mm-hmm.
Can we actually design and sell our own equipment? And the original concept, and people don't know this and whatever, I guess it doesn't really matter, but the original concept was if this worked, because at the time, financially, drum corps were falling off the planet.
Yeah.
Right? They just couldn't keep it going. And if we could find some kind of other revenue to help keep the drum corps going, it wasn't going to be System Blue, it was going to be System Maroon, System White, System Red. All these other drum corps can now attach this model, and so they can also, create revenue, by joining other companies or whatever, partnership with other companies to try to help them out. And that was the original concept, and still is. The equipment was going pretty good. What's really interesting is 2019, we won the DCI title, and every instrument except the speakers and synthesizer were System Blue. All the keyboards, all the battery equipment, all the brass instruments, they were all System Blue. And we won the title that year in 2019. And then COVID showed up. And when COVID showed up, all the marching bands and everyone else stopped buying anything. And we were not in any position to have any kind of non-income coming in for the System Blue brand at the time.
Right.
So we had to give it up. So we had to just give it up and say maybe some other day, but right now it's gone. Yeah, which broke my heart. The whole concept was to get lighter equipment out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially for the indoor guys, I see what these junior high and high school kids are doing. They're running crazy and they're still carrying the same weight we carry during the summer. It's like there's got to be a better way to do this and still have a good sound. So that was our process of trying to develop lighter equipment with still a good sound. And we're getting close. We still have a lot of work to do, obviously, but we were getting close on that. And unfortunately, it kind of fell through with COVID.
When I saw the development of System Blue, the one thing that I loved was for the tenors, where how sometimes you can get those rim clicks between the 2 and the 4 drum. There was that gap. And I'm just like, yes, I'm not a quad player, but I'm just saying I can only imagine how freeing that is without having to not even worrying about that anymore.
I was trying to get every company before System Blue to do that. I even took some of the rims down. I don't say what company it was at the time, but down to a guy said, can you just cut these out? Just cut, cut a half-inch down and, just eliminate those plane zones where the sticks travel. Mm-hmm. And they did it for me and I tried it out and it worked great, of course. So we did that with System Blue, and, at all the trade shows I'd have tenor drummers coming up to me saying, that's cheating. I go, cheating? I go, do you guys use a Dr. Beat? They go, well, yeah. I go, you're cheating. They go, what do you mean? I go, I had a cowbell back in my day. That's how we kept tempo. Now you're using a dot. So you're You're using technology to cheat. I go, this is
Right.
the same thing. We're trying to make it easier for you guys and have a better sound quality. That's the goal, have a better sound quality. And if you can avoid hitting a rim, that's going to be better sound quality.
Absolutely. As we begin to wind down here, obviously, you've been at the Blue Devil, you said 46 years. That's incredible.
Yeah,
If
I
you
know,
can
right?
give me, if you can, the top 3 drum lines that you've ever taught at BD.
I knew that was coming. Um, and I'll tell you my answer every year. The number one is going to be 2025.
Okay.
Number two is probably the 1983 line.
Mm-hmm.
That's because that was just an amazing array of talent, and that was the largest drum spread ever in the activity from first to second place at finals. And it's a bunch of great guys too. So I
Mm-hmm.
still connect with a lot of those guys from the 83 line.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one's probably got to be '09 because that line, we were undefeated in drums, which doesn't go around nowadays very much. And we were
Yeah.
undefeated in drum corps too, so when the drum corps wins and the drum line wins, it's a great year. But yeah, so that would be it. 2025, 83, and '09. Let's go with those three.
It's a non-drum corps question. Now, I know, you're born and raised in the Bay, and you were a die-hard member of Raider Nation. And I just need to know. You see, I do my homework, Scott. I do my
You do.
homework. I
You do.
do. With Antonio Pierce now at the helm as the head coach, Devontae Adams out there, you know what I mean? How do you see the season panning out? You still got the reigning defending 2-time Super Bowl champion Chiefs, going on. You got the Chargers. That's they got Jim Harbaugh, and Bo Nix is now the starting quarterback of the Broncos. How do you see everything mixing with the AFC West?
We haven't played a game yet, man. We're going to the Super Bowl. It's all good. That's a line, especially as a Raider fan, you got to use that before the season even starts. And
Absolutely,
I will say
absolutely.
this. I mean, I think Antonio Pierce has brought a new energy to the team, and like I
Yeah.
was born and raised in the Raider world, right? My dad had season tickets. Mom and dad had season tickets. I was born into that world. And when mom was sick, I got to go to the games as a kid. So I've been there forever and still am. Even when they moved to LA, I still remained a Raider fan. And when they came back from LA, my wife and I got season tickets. So when they were back in Oakland this last stint, we were at all the games. And then when we went to Vegas, I'd say, yeah, I'm not going to get season tickets in Vegas. It's all good.
Nah.
But right now it looks great, right? Everything looks great before the season starts, And I will say this: the last team to beat the Kansas City Chiefs were the Raiders. The regular season, we were the last ones to beat them, and then they won everything else after that, going into the playoffs as well as the Super Bowl. But hey, I'm a sports diehard. I mean,
Yeah.
I love competition. If you could tell, and so I'm a sports addict. Between basketball, baseball, football, I got my teams, and I support the hell out of them, and totally enjoy watching them all the time.
Absolutely. Same here, man. So before we get out of here, where can people find you on social media, to catch up in the world of ScoJo?
Yeah, I don't do social media too much. I got an Instagram account out there because the Blue Devil media team said I have to have one. So, and that's the old school of me talking, right? So
Right,
I'm sure
right.
you can find it anywhere. I do have a website. It's a fan page. It's not a communication page because I was
Mhm.
told by a lawyer don't do that. So yeah, I'm not big in the media. But if you want to get a hold of me, it's easy to get a hold of me. My number, my email address, everything's in the Blue Devil website. You can definitely find me through Blue Devils and anything else you want to find about me. It's all there, I'm sure. But yeah, man, I want to thank you for having me. Again, I love this activity so much, and people keep asking when I'm going to retire. I'm 66 years old now, and I keep telling them I'm having way too much fun. The joke is my drum staff, who's younger than me, and I tell them, I go, you'll let me know when it's time, right? And they're going, what do you mean? I go, well, when I make the wrong call or do something stupid or, oh my God, he's lost it. I go, you will let me know. And of course, my boy Rudy, he's going, don't worry, man. We got the wheelchair and the orange jumpsuit in the back of the bus. He goes, when we wheel it out, you'll know it's time.
Yeah. Well, Scott, let
So
me
I
just
haven't,
say this. Let me just say this. I have something here, and I think I alluded to when I met you in a couple of weeks ago. I still have this book. I
ah,
bought this in I believe the summer of 2001, the line Blue Devil Book of Drumming. And let me
Yeah.
just say that there was, in the 90s growing up, we didn't have access to stuff like this. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have, Instagram. We didn't have any of that. So we had people that were trying to figure out transcribing notes. So when I first saw the music for the ditty, I'm like, thank you, thank you, thank you, because it was about time. But it's stuff like this, and like yourself and others, that inspired me, to continue drumming. Even though, like I said, I retired, but I still drum every day on my drum pad. I still do. And I still watch, and I still keep my finger to the pulse of what's going on in the activity. And like, you're a legend, you know what I mean? And you're having fun doing it. And I am truly honored. You have no idea how honored I am to have you on the D-Lew podcast, man. So thank you so, so much for giving me your time. I appreciate it.
No, no, man, it's been my pleasure. And again, man, thanks for coming up and saying hi to me in Delaware. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me on. I really
You
appreciate it.